Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Unemployment among people with disabilities in New York remains frustratingly high at 67%, but there are employers who, working with the state, are making a real difference. And Howard Gross is one of those employers. He owns eBizDocs, an electronic content solutions provider in Menands, where over 60% of employees have disabilities. And he joins us tonight to advocate for hiring people with disabilities, as well as to push the state to make permanent a temporary change to the New York State finance law passed in 2022. Howard, great to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
So my first question is, why is unemployment among people with disabilities so frustratingly high? I mean, this is something that we've talked about on television and in the past on the radio for so many years.
I think people are afraid of trying something new. I think there's a huge number of people with that have disclosed a disability that are looking for work, and people are not going to those non-traditional sources to hire them. Go to the local ARCs, go to the Center for Disability Services, go to other employment agencies, ask for a diverse workforce, and you'll get a great workforce.
You know, when people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, they don't think about people with disabilities.
No.
But that is one of the elements, isn't it?
Yeah, for 25 years, we've been creating a workforce that reflects our community. And I think that part of it, the people with disabilities, people, men and women, different ethnicities, you need to create a workforce that reflects your community.
Absolutely. You have employed people with disabilities for years. Would you like to this is your opportunity to tell other employers who might be considering hiring people with disabilities why it's such a good idea?
Sure. The longevity of an employee with a disability is extremely long.
You've talked about the loyalty.
Oh, loyalty, the camaraderie, the teamwork. I think anybody that's looking for a job, that's really looking for a job and finds a good place is going to be there for a long time. And we've been blessed to have lots of employees, over 60 employees are working for us, and they are very happy, they're treated very well, and they produce a great product.
There are concerns among employers that, if I hire somebody with a disability, I'm going to have to make special accommodations for those people, and that's going to be very expensive. What has been your experience?
It's true. It's a fact. But if you hire somebody with a disability, you know what you're getting. If you hire somebody without a disability and they go home and they fall off their roof, God forbid, you have to make accommodations for them. As our population continues to age, we need to make accommodations for them. So all of these accommodations are things that we have to do. And I like to say, if you hire somebody that's already in a wheelchair, that's one chair you don't have to purchase as an employer. So you're saving money.
Well, that's an interesting perspective.
This concept of it's going to cost a lot of money, it's a huge fallacy.
Employees do cost money, no matter if they're disabled or not.
Right, and if you want to treat them well, they're going to cost money.
Right. If a company works for New York State, as eBizDocs does, what kind of benefits does the company get from the state if the company hires people with disabilities?
Sure, there are two types. We are a member of the New York State Industries for the Disabled procurement group. So we get some advantages in going after state contracts. But as a regular employee, also, because we also work on non-state work, we work on projects in Massachusetts, we work on projects for private sector, there's also tax incentives for hiring people with disabilities, and they vary based on salaries and wages and all sorts of things. But the bottom line is you're hiring a good employee, so that outranks anything else you're going to get.
There are tax incentives you don't even take.
No,
because
it's not worth the paperwork.
Right, you just like to hire the employee.
I just want to hire somebody that's good.
That's great. So you're also an advocate, as I mentioned, and you're pushing the state legislature to make permanent certain changes to something called the Preferred Source Modernization Act.
That's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful, but it's going to sunset next October 2025. What is it, and why is it so important that the legislature make it permanent?
It's critical that we modernize some of the language in that. We need to define a person with a disability as just a person with a disability. We don't need to put terms to define how severe a disability is. We need to just say a person who has a disability.
Do they have to acknowledge that they have a disability?
Sure. I think one of the things, for example, my workforce, we have 60% of our workforce has disclosed they have a disability. I believe that number is closer to 80%. And I would imagine many workforces around the state have a person with a disability that hasn't yet disclosed. Nobody goes in and says, hey, this is, this is what this is something you have to accommodate.
Do you think that people who have disabilities are fearful that they won't be hired if they acknowledge that disability?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think everybody. I think when you go to an interview, you put on a suit, you get dressed up, you put your best foot forward.
Right.
They want to put their best foot forward. They want to put their best face forward.
So I just want to mention that in September, Governor Kathy Hochul issued an executive order committing New York to be an employment-first state and to increase competitive integrated employment for New Yorkers with disabilities. If the Preferred Source Modernization Act is not made permanent, that program will go back to outdated language and it will just go backwards.
Right, and that's not the direction that New York State should be moving. We need to continue moving forward. We need to set precedent for the rest of the country, especially in these times.
There are a lot of myths around hiring people with disabilities. These are myths that you and I have talked about before on the air. But one of the myths is that they're not going to show up or they're not going to be good employees. But the fact is that these are people who will stay with you for years, aren't
Absolutely. And I think the biggest
So you don't
thing
need
is,
to retrain.
No, I think the biggest issue is you need to put the person in the job that's right for them. And if we take somebody who's on the spectrum and we put them in a quality control position because they like to see things exactly the way they need to be, repetitive. But when I go to a grocery store and I get a chatty person who's packing my bags, that's the wrong job for that person. And that sets everybody opposed to hiring someone with a disability. You shouldn't put somebody that's a talker. I want to get out of the store, pack my bags, and let me out. Don't give me someone who's chatty.
But if you like to have...
But who likes to talk at the end of shopping? You want out.
We have been speaking with Howard Gross. He's the owner of eBizDocs, a proponent of hiring people living with disabilities in the right job.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's always good to see you.
It's always a pleasure.